Morning. Thank you everyone for joining us. As you come in, please, in the chat, you will find the link to our pre-test. If you all could please take a chance. Oh, a bit of an echo. Okay. I'll turn my audio off and on and see if that helps. Oh, okay. Great. Maybe it's not an echo for everybody. Um, Okay, fantastic. So if there's a link to the pre-test in the chat. So if folks want to take a sec to click on that, thank you so much, Felicia, for putting that in the chat as we get started. So thanks everyone so much for joining us today. My name is Jackie Garlock. I'm with the Community Technical Assistance Center of New York at McSilver, NYU, and I'm really excited to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Yes, here's the thank you for the pretest link. It should be under Felicia, who's CTAC admin, has just put it in the chat. Okay, great. I'm glad folks see it. Okay. Um, on joining the webinar, you'll notice you'll be placed on mute. This is just to avoid background noise. And if you'd like to activate closed captions for the presentation today, you can do so by clicking the button on your toolbar that says Live Transcripts and then selecting Show Subtitles. I just want to mention also that AI bots, like Otter AI, are not permitted to join our offerings. So apologies for that in advance if that's something that folks use. Um, you come across any technical issues during today's event, um, folks are already seeing this. Our CTAC admin Felicia is here to assist you, so please chat to her and she will do her best to address your needs. Um, Please, throughout the presentation today, put your questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A section at the end, and also Dr. Greene, our presenter today, tends to answer questions throughout the webinar. So please chat in your thoughts, your ideas, and your questions throughout the webinar today. Um, so we are offering 2 continuing education credits today for eligible counselors, psychologists, psychoanalysts, social workers attending today's presentation. I believe that's all of the licenses. Oh, LMFTs as well, licensed marriage and family therapists as well. Sorry, forgot those. You must be present for at least 75% of the offering and attending using your own Zoom link on a computer in order to receive credit. If you are eligible for receive credit, you will get all of the instructions for how to obtain that credit in your email in a couple days following this webinar. Um, and that will give you all of the information you need to get your CEs. Um, so uh, that is great. Also the recording and the presentation slides for this presentation will be posted on our website, ctacny.org. Or actually, sorry, it's mcsilverta.org. Sorry, our website changed. mcsilverta.org, generally within the next week or so, following the presentation. Again, if you all could take this chance to fill out our pre-survey, which the link is in the chat. That would be great. We're going to have a post survey following the offering, which will also help us to see whether what we're presenting is useful for you all. Please use that feedback survey also to give us your thoughts on what other offerings you'd like to see. We really do take those seriously. Thank you so much. Please, again, if you have any other questions, please chat to Felicia or myself throughout the presentation. So I'm delighted to introduce you all today to our presenter, Dr. Ross Greene, for the second half of our The Kids Who Aren't Okay Part 2, Practice Implications. The first part of this was given last year in the fall or winter. If you did not attend the first part, that's totally fine. Dr. Greene is going to do a brief review of some of the concepts that we covered, so you will totally be able to catch up. Dr. Greene, whenever you are ready, you can take it away here. I'll get to the first slide.
I am ready.
Fantastic.
Thank you for hosting me again. Hello, everybody. Good to be with you all again. The only hitch today is that I have a cold, which may add some sneezing to the proceedings, but is unlikely to affect the content. Um, what I thought I would do, as Jackie mentioned, is a little bit of review for those of you who were not here for the first session, and then as promised, get into the nuances of and technicalities of the CPS model. Um, let's go through the basics fairly quickly. And as Jackie also mentioned, I'm going to be looking at the chat for your questions as I go. So if you have a question or comment about anything that I'm covering, if you need clarification, if you have a reaction or an observation, pop it in there. I don't know if I'll be able to get to everything that ends up in there, but I'll do my best to cover as much as I can. So here we go. Also, this is going to be primarily focused on clinical settings. Um, Kids with concerning behaviors at home. So we're going to talk some about parents as well. If you're an educator or you work in a school and you're feeling left out, um, just pop questions into the chat and we'll make sure we give you what you came for. Application of the collaborative and proactive solutions model isn't all that different based on setting. It just isn't. Um, but certainly when we are working with families, family dynamics come into play in the same way that school dynamics come into play when we're doing this in a school or hierarchies and dynamics of treatment facilities come into play when we're doing this in those types of settings. The basics are the same. Hopefully, your questions will get at the nuances. Here we go. Here's what you should know already. And if you don't, you will in a moment. This is huge. There's five key themes to the CPS model. The first one might be the biggest because it requires a massive shift. Generally speaking, parents are coming into treatment talking about a kid's concerning behavior. And what they're likely to tell you is everything they've been doing to try to modify their kid's concerning behavior. Um, my understanding is that you will be able to get the slides, but you'll get an answer. That was the intent. Um, we're shifting that right from the get-go. Because for a lot of kids who are struggling, and by the way, the name of the webinar, The Kids Who Aren't Okay, refers to the fact that there's a lot of kids who aren't doing very well these days. But it's also the name of my forthcoming book, which will be out next Tuesday. Um, that's why we're calling it The Kids Who Aren't Okay. Not very book sale oriented, but just so you know, you're helping people make a huge shift when you take them from focusing on behavior and trying to modify it and have them focus instead on the problems that are causing those behaviors and solving them. That is just a completely different universe. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, that is typically accomplished through an instrument called the Assessment of Skills and Unsolved Problems that we'll get to in a bit. That's the formal assessment tool. There's times when I don't do the formal assessment tool, but I do an informal assessment. But the whole key here is I'm not really asking about a kid's concerning behaviors. I'm asking about the problems that are causing those behaviors. Many of you know this already. In the CPS model, we call them unsolved problems. also known as problems that have yet to be solved, also known as problems that are waiting to be solved. If they're still waiting to be solved, then they must be old, unsolved problems. Why would we continue focusing on a kid's concerning behavior when what they're really walking in the door with is a big pile of unsolved problems? Now, the synonym for unsolved problem is unmet expectation. Those are synonyms. I use them interchangeably. Any expectation a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting is what we would call an unsolved problem. And it is those unmet expectations, those expectations that kids are having difficulty meeting, that are setting in motion their concerning behavior. Another set of synonyms for you here. The synonyms for concerning behavior are frustration response, distress response. I like distress response because it ties us back to infancy. Infants have distress responses. We all have distress responses. Um, what do we do with infants when they are exhibiting a distress response? First, we notice that they're in distress. I know that sounds like a given, but it's not always a given. Then we try to figure out what's causing the distress. Then we try to do something about what we believe is causing the distress. And then we are completely dependent on the infant to let us know how we did. Over time, we get to know the infant. We get to know what tends to cause distress responses in the infant. We get to know what solutions tend to work for those things that are causing the infant distress. And so it goes. This requires that we notice that the infant is in distress, care that the infant is in distress, interpret the infant's distress appropriately, have repertoires of solutions that we can apply, and pay attention to what the infant is telling us about how well we did at figuring out what's getting in their way and applying a solution that will address it. That's what we tend to do up until around the age of 2. At around the age of 2, um, adults tend to become obsessed with compliance. And kids at the age of 2, um, who I would argue knew what they wanted already, are starting to develop skills that permit them to go for it, mainly locomotion and language. No wonder they call it the terrible twos. At the same time that the kid is now developing skills that permit them to assert some independence, adults become obsessed with compliance. Tough recipe right there. This is going to sound a little nuts, but here's what I've been saying lately. Non-compliance is good because non-compliance tells you that there's an expectation a kid is having difficulty meeting. When a kid is not complying, it's because there's an expectation they're having difficulty meeting. There's an unsolved problem causing that concerning behavior. Not only that, you want to know, right? You want to know that the kid is in distress or that the kid is frustrated. Non-compliance is also informative. If us caregivers take the time, first of all, interpret it accurately, but secondly, take the time to figure out what's getting in the way for the kid so we can solve that problem. You don't do any of that when you're focused on a kid's concerning behavior. When you're focused on a kid's concerning behavior, consequences are the rule of the day. You're going to reward the behaviors you like so as to see more of them. You're going to punish the behaviors you don't so as to see less of them. You might teach and reteach replacement behaviors, and you might check in and check out about behaviors Um, all of that is focused on behavior. If all we're focused on is a kid's frustration response, we never find out what's making it hard for the kid to meet the expectations that are causing those frustration responses. As a clinician, the buck stops here. That's probably what people have been doing all along. So when it comes to leverage, you got leverage. You don't really want to teach them to do the same thing. You want to teach them to do something different. That starts with focusing on unsolved problems, unmet expectations, not the behaviors that are being caused by those unmet expectations. That is huge. You just did a piece of work, even though they're coming in asking about the kids' concerning behaviors. There's another question they might be asking. Why is my kid exhibiting concerning behaviors? Let's think about what our answers are going to be. Um, your kid is exhibiting frustration responses that might be big because they're struggling with the skills that are involved in responding adaptively to problems and frustrations. Responding adaptively to problems and frustrations requires skills. This is not an issue of motivation. This is an issue of skill. The skills we talk about a lot to help parents understand why their kid is punching a hole in the wall, why the kid is punching them, why their kid is hitting, kicking, biting, throwing, destroying, running. Skills. Huge, huge mentality shift. Because for a very long time, we've been thinking that this is poor motivation. We've also been thinking something else, and parents are walking in with this too. Um, they're thinking it's their fault because for a very long time, the most popular way of thinking about concerning behavior in kids was that it was due to passive, permissive, inconsistent, non-contingent, inept parenting. No wonder they think it's their fault. We've been blaming them. So number one, we've done them a huge favor just by helping them understand that this is about skills. Big frustration responses are about skills, not motivation, and therefore those motivational strategies may not be real useful, as they have probably learned over lo these many years. But there's another favor you're going to do them. Um, as it relates to answering the question, why is my kid exhibiting concerning behavior? The answer is because they are frustrated about expectations they're having difficulty reliably meeting. When they're not having difficulty meeting an expectation, we don't see concerning behavior. It's when they are having difficulty meeting an expectation that we see a frustration or distress response. What a piece of work you just did. Boy, you are changing some lenses. Um, Look how far you're taking them just by having them focus on unmet expectations, unsolved problems, instead of the frustration responses that are being caused by them, which is the main thing they want to talk about when they're walking in the door. You are helping them understand their kid. You are helping them understand why what they've done so far hasn't worked very well. See, a timeout isn't going to solve any of those unsolved problems. A sticker isn't. Um, Privilege loss isn't. Teaching and reteaching replacement behaviors, that's not a problem-solving strategy. Get this. You know, it's big these days, teaching kids how to regulate. But by the time the kid has to regulate, an unsolved problem has already set in motion a frustration response. So, what we are teaching kids to do is what they should do after the unsolved problem. Unsolved problems help us be early, not late. help us be proactive, not reactive. I cannot emphasize what a huge shift this is. And I'm not going to spend time teaching you how to use the ASUP. And when we get to it, um, you'll see that it is the assessment of skills and unsolved problems, or ASUP, that facilitates the identification of those unsolved problems, as well as the skills that kids are struggling with that help explain their poor frustration response. We're only on slide number 1, and we've already changed a lot for these parents and this kid. So, one of the most important activities in this model um, is to identify unsolved problems. Because if we do not identify unsolved problems proactively, we will not solve them proactively, and we will always find ourselves in the heat of the moment, dealing yet again with a kid's frustration response. Um, you have just set the stage for completely different ways of having caregivers interact with kids, and the timing, just by having them focus on problems rather than the behaviors that are being caused by those problems. More details on on what that conversation sounds like as we go along. Any questions, pop them in there. Here's the next big leap, especially for adults who believe that they are supposed to know what's making it hard for a kid to meet an expectation, or that they already do, and that they are also supposed to know what to do about it. That's unilateral problem solving. That's not what we're doing in this model. In this model, the kid is an integral, indispensable part of the problem solving process. The kid is our primary source of information on what's making it hard for them to meet an expectation. And the kid is going to be integral to helping us come up with a solution. Um, some caregivers find this to be quite the relief. So I don't have to be a mind reader. I don't have to divine what's getting in the kid's way, and I don't have to divine solutions based on what I divined about what's getting in the kid's way. Exactly. In this model, you got a teammate, you got a partner, the kid. That is huge, huge. But of course, we can't talk about solving problems collaboratively unless we're talking about solving problems in the first place. Oops. Problem solving is also proactive. What's walking in the door are folks who've been leaping into action when things already get ugly. And in chapter 3 of The Kids Who Aren't Okay, the name of that chapter is Set Up to Be Late. I go through all the things we train educators in particular to do once a kid is already escalated. In other words, when it's already late. What I've not given enough thought to is it just human nature to be late? Um, I haven't thought about this enough to know where I come down on this. Is it human nature to be late? And what we've done is build structures around that human tendency? Or is the reason we're late so much is because of those structures? A lot of people think, for example, de-escalating is crisis prevention. It's not. It occurs very late in a sequence of events that begins with an unsolved problem. Truth is, everything that comes after that unsolved problem, everything that comes after a kid is having difficulty meeting an expectation is going to be late. So Whether it's human nature or not, one thing is for sure, we're not going to help these folks if we perpetuate lateness. How do you stop perpetuating lateness? By helping people identify all the expectations a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. That's pushing them upstream. Because what a lot of folks are doing is wait until downstream. By the time it's hot, not much good is going to occur. Teaching people how to be late is also big business. I'm one of those people who don't think lateness is a given because a lot of people will say to me, well, yeah, but this is a very complex, difficult, perhaps as it relates to the question that just came in, a developmentally delayed kid who is very black and white. That didn't change a thing. That kid's unsolved problems are still highly predictable, can still be identified proactively, and can still be solved proactively. Characteristics of the kid might come into play in the problem solving process. We'll get to that. But as it relates to identifying unsolved problems, solving those problems collaboratively, and solving those problems proactively, kid characteristics are not really going to affect much. Believe it or not. Now, the main thing it might affect is the expectations we're placing on a kid. In the CPS model, we call this expectation management. Characteristics of the kid could come into play when, and this is another important clinical role, when we are exploring with caregivers whether the expectations they're placing on a kid are expectations the kid can actually meet, and dealing with the responses that we often get when we question the appropriateness of expectations for a particular kid. This just got very interesting. But we're going to stick with the basics for now and then deal with the nuances of how people who are new to this react to it and what we say to people who are reacting to it. All right, very quickly, because I'm taking too much time already. The mentality of the model, kids do well if they can. The belief that if this kid could do well, they would do well. Something's getting in the way. What's getting in the way? Um, Skills as it relates to their maladaptive frustration responses, unsolved problems as it relates to what's setting in motion those frustration responses. If kids do well if they can is true. People sometimes ask me, is kids do well if they can a philosophy or is it based on research? The answer, both. It is a philosophy about people. People do well if they can. Parents do well if they can. Educators do well if they can. Kids do well if they can. So it is a philosophy, but it's also based on an enormous amount of research that has accumulated over the last 40 to 50 years, telling us something very important about kids with concerning behavior as compared to kids who don't have concerning behavior. Kids with concerning behavior are struggling with certain skills. And we are going to identify those skills for each kid on the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. And now, characterizations like attention seeking, manipulative, coercive, unmotivated, limit testing, lazy don't make any sense anymore. All of those characterizations flow from the kids do well if they wanna mentality. That's not the mentality of this model. What a favor you have done to parents and any other caregiver to help them come to recognize that this kid is not yanking their chain, is not exhibiting frustration responses on purpose to coerce them into capitulating. Yes, coercion theory has been the leading way of thinking about kids with concerning behavior for a very long time. It was my original training um, until I started paying attention to the research telling us that kids with concerning behaviors were struggling with skills, but especially when I started listening to many of the parents I was working with who were telling me they had other kids in their home who were well behaved. In other words, they aren't passive, permissive, inconsistent, non contingent, inept disciplinarians, and their kid is not attention seeking, manipulative, coercive, unmotivated, limit testing. Wow. We've gotten it wrong across the board. Kids do all if they can. What's in it for the kid to be doing poorly? And then, sort of a sub theme of that last one, doing well is preferable. For me, a statement of the obvious. Of course, doing well is preferable. A preference for doing well explains why most of us do well most of the time. We prefer it. The point that I always make is so do kids with concerning behavior. They prefer doing well too. They're struggling with the skills that are required for pulling it off. This is a very, very different view of kids who are struggling and parents and other caregivers who are struggling. No blaming, no shaming. There are expectations this kid is having difficulty meeting, and that's when they exhibit a frustration response. And the nature of that frustration response is determined by skills. We just made this a whole lot more simple. How do we operationalize all of that? There's two key components to this model. Many of you heard this the last time. I'm taking too long here on the review, but part number one, we're going to identify those skills and unsolved problems using the ASUP. Part number two, we're going to start solving problems collaboratively and proactively. Some very interesting things start to happen when we're doing those two things. Let me tell you this model is a blast. Um, you probably do know this. A lot of clinicians don't want to work with these kids. They'd rather work with kids who are blue, anxious. Um, these kids are a blast. They tend to be spunky. Um, they don't have the slightest idea why they have big frustration responses. They respond very well to being understood. Um, this begins with helping caregivers identify skills and unsolved problems using the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. It'll come up on the screens soon. One of the most important things that the assessment of skills and unsolved problems helps us accomplish is it makes intervention proactive rather than reactive. We are going to get these people out of the heat of the moment. We are going to spend almost no time telling them what to do once the heat of the moment occurs. I mean, if they want to know, I say defuse, de-escalate, keep everybody safe. That's what the crisis management folks tell you to do. And I'm not oversimplifying it. I'm just saying there's really nothing okay. There's nothing better to do in the heat of the moment. Defuse, de-escalate, keep everybody safe. Defusing can include co-regulation. Just notice when co-regulation is kicking in. Um, and now, after you've diffused, de-escalated, and kept everybody safe, ask ourselves, what just happened? What, what was that frustration response over? Now, here's the deal. You, the setup here is that you've already done the assessment of skills and unsolved problems with them. So you've already identified the skills, and you hopefully have now identified every expectation this kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. That is up front. What I talk to schools about these days is that's pre multi-tiered systems of support. It's early. Um, multi-tiered systems of support. Do we even still need it if we're doing the ASUP early? Food for thought, but we're not focused on schools today. Skills are going to help. Going through skills is going to help adults view these kids through much more accurate, compassionate, productive lenses. Identifying unsolved problems is going to help them know the unsolved problems they could have been busy solving for a very long time. Once again, most of them are old. Um, we get some very interesting reactions as people are identifying those unsolved problems. Here are some of those reactions. These are great reactions. Wow, I didn't realize there were so many. Good that we now realize there are so many. Um, if I woke up in the morning and knew I was going to get hit with all these unsolved problems, I don't think I'd get out of bed. Some don't. I don't think I'd go to school. Some don't. This is big. Can this kid actually meet all of these expectations? If not, why are we putting these expectations on this kid that we already know this kid can't meet? That is huge. Expectations can't be random. Expectations have to be paired with the kid as their own reference point. Well, in schools, we just blew high stakes testing out of the water. That made no sense right out of the gate. And most educators knew that 30 years ago. Each kid is their own reference point. Somebody else's kid is not our reference point. This kid is our reference point. Our judgment about what this kid is actually capable of doing at this point in their development. Huge. Among the expectations we believe this kid can meet, are all of them of equal importance? That's a great reaction because once we identify them, we're not going to be able to solve them all at once because there's going to be way too many. So we're going to have to prioritize. Whoa. All that is taking place while we're identifying skills and unsolved problems with kids. Uh-huh. You already know why we're solving problems collaboratively and proactively, is at least some of it, because that's what's going to promote a partnership between caregivers and the kid. This is not adversarial. This is not enemies. It never needed to be. And what's walking in the door tends to be adversarial and enemies. A lot of that is because they've been focused on behavior and modifying it. A lot of that is because adults have been using power as part of modifying behavior, and power solves no problems, not durably, anyhow. Yes, it is through that process that we are engaging kids in solving the problems that are affecting their lives. That's the process that helps us come up with much better solutions than us adults divine on our own based on no information whatsoever from the intended beneficiary of those solutions. And this is a big deal. When you're solving problems collaboratively and proactively with kids, you're not just solving problems, which is a big deal all by itself. You're not just improving behavior because solved problems don't cause concerning behavior. Only unsolved problems do. You're also improving relationships. You're also improving communication. But just through the problem solving process, by engaging kids in the problem solving process, you are simultaneously enhancing skills. Whose skills? Certainly the kids' skills. Anybody else? Yeah, the caregivers who are participating in the process as well. Here's the ASUP 2024 rendition. It's available on the Lives in the Balance website. I'm just going to describe it here for you. But this is a key, as you've now heard, this is key for setting the stage for what you're going to be working on and the tenor of that work. This kid is struggling with skills. That's why they have maladaptive frustration responses. What skills? We're going to identify them in the top section of the ASUP. And that is not an exhaustive list of skills. There's no need to be exhaustive about skills. We just got to get people thinking skills. So there's 16 skills there. That tends to do the trick. We don't need a list of 150 skills to do the trick. 16 skills tends to do the trick. And by the way, this can be emotional for parents. Um, Emotional in a few different ways. First of all, it's emotional because they've had very different views on their kids concerning behavior. And now they're being given a different view, a much more accurate, compassionate, productive view. They start to blame themselves. Well, we don't want them blaming themselves. They didn't know what they didn't know. Now they know. In the bottom section, we are identifying, helping parents identify every single expectation this kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I can. Nope, that's not the right button to push. I might not be able to make it bigger. In the unsolved problems section, there are prompts. Some of the prompts, the ones on the left, are specific to schools and treatment facilities. The prompts on the right are specific to home and clinic. If you are a clinician, you'll use the prompts on the right. If you are working in a school or treatment facility, you'll use the prompts on the left. They're not that different from each other, but they're different enough to have two different sets of prompts. Those prompts are what get the ball rolling on identifying a kid's unsolved problems. Now, I keep saying a kid's unsolved problems. Unsolved problems are actually jointly owned because while it is true that the kid is having difficulty meeting the expectation, it is also true that the caregiver is the one putting those expectations on the kid. So I'll keep saying the kid's unsolved problems, but as long as you know they're jointly owned, we're good to go. We're going to make a list of every expectation this kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. Even if the kid can meet the expectations sometimes and not others, it's still an unmet expectation. And now, finally, at long last, we have helped caregivers create the list. Huge. We are at the beginning of organizing the effort, of having them focus on something completely different, problems, not the behaviors being caused by those problems. And we have taken 10 giant leaps forward in the direction of being proactive rather than reactive. By the time the frustration response is occurring, we're late. At the beginning of that sequence is an unsolved problem, an expectation a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. Huge. What a favor you have done these people who you're working with. And believe it or not, as you'll hear soon, generally speaking, all of that is occurring in session number 1. We'll get to that. I promise I'm going to give you the whole sequence of how this plays out in a clinical setting. Just know the ASUP is huge. Um, when you're doing the ASUP, and by the way, the ASUP is a discussion guide. I don't send ASUPs home for people to complete. I help them complete it. It's a discussion guide. Generally speaking, you'll hear soon in session number 1. The website is livesinthebalance.org. Let me type it into the chat, or I bet One of our hosts will type it in the chat, livesinthebalance.org. That is the website of the nonprofit I founded. You want to know about that website because there is a boatload of free resources on this model on this website and other training opportunities if you want to go further. The wording of the unsolved problem is critical because the wording of the unsolved problem on the ASUP is going to translate directly into the words that you're going to use when it comes time to introduce the unsolved problem to the kid when y'all are about to solve the problem together. Poorly worded unsolved problems often cause the entire problem-solving process to come to a dead stop before it even gets started. All because of how we worded the unsolved problem? Yep. That's why we're helping caregivers do it, generally speaking, once again, in session number 1. Boy, there's a lot going on during that ASIP meeting. Whether it's in a school or a treatment facility or a clinic, there's a lot going on. People are fine, caregivers are finally coming to the recognition. Concerning behavior isn't random. Concerning behavior occurs in response to unsolved problems that have never been identified. Isn't this something? That's what people start to come to in an ASIP meeting. Deborah is asking, I'm going to answer it now. What if you have an ADHD kid? I'm not sure that's going to be the biggest part here. Who, when asked in the mornings to put his clothes on, instead goes to his toy room to take a book, or at night when told to get PJs on, but instead gets a snack. And when I ask the kid why he does the opposite, he admits that he preferred to read instead of just wanting to snack. Is he on solved problem? The idea of him just wanting to get what he wants? No, but that would be a very popular belief. And it appears that he just wants to play and not meet the expectation of doing what he's told. Deborah, that's because you didn't drill far. I haven't talked about drilling yet. That's because you didn't probe far enough. Um, but you do, for now, we'll get into the probing part in a minute. For now, you have 2 unsolved problems, probably way more than that. By the way, the ADHD kid part, I'm not feeling like that's going to be the biggest part here. Doesn't explain what you're describing to me. Difficulty putting clothes on in the morning is one unsolved problem. And difficulty, the rest of it is what he's doing instead. That's not part of the unsolved problem. Difficulty um, putting his PJs on when it's time to go to bed at night. Those are the 2 problems you need to solve with your kid. The fact that you've been able to type them into the chat tells me that they are old unsolved problems. The fact that they are old unsolved problems tells me that they are highly predictable. If they're highly predictable, they can be identified proactively and they can be solved proactively so you don't find yourself in the heat of the moment yet again. You want to solve those problems proactively. You will get much better information that way. Now, you are telling us some of the things your kid said first, um, but we're not going to stop on what the kid says first. We're going to keep probing so that we find out what's making it hard for your kid to meet those expectations. And once again, I'm going to bet there's a lot more that still need to be solved. That's it. That's the process. But first, we're going to help people word those unsolved problems. And wording unsolved problems well involves 4 guidelines. We're going to leave concerning behavior out of the wording of the unsolved problem because in this model, we are not talking with kids about their concerning behavior. Unsolved problems are a much better entry point, as we always say, a much better conversation starter. When you try to talk with kids about their concerning behavior, there's a few, generally speaking, things that are likely to happen. Thing number 1, they're going to think they're in trouble. They're going to become defensive, and they're going to stop talking. Thing number 2, they're going to say, I don't know. That pretty much covers it. Always the chance that you will get the most primitive of defense mechanisms when you try to talk about kids to kids about their concerning behavior. Denial. Uh, I noticed you hit your brother. What's going on with that? I didn't hit him. Conversations about behavior, generally speaking, go Nowhere. Conversations about expectations kids are having difficulty meeting go somewhere. But don't wait till the heat of the moment to have those discussions. That's bad timing. The wording of the unsolved problem contains no adult theories. You are not explaining to the kid why they're having difficulty meeting the expectation in the wording of the unsolved problem. The reason you're trying to word your unsolved problem without theories is because the kid, once again, is the most critical source of information on what's making it hard for them to meet an expectation. So you're not preempting what we're going to call the information gathering process. We are facilitating it by leaving adult theories out. The wording of the unsolved problem is split, not clumped. If your wording is, for example, I've noticed you have difficulty following directions. Um, that refers to probably 57 different directions the kid is having trouble following. You're not going to get any information from the kid that way because it's too big. Um, Actually, those two unsolved problems that we just mentioned with our participant would be great examples of much more specific expectations the kid is having difficulty following related to difficulty following directions. So they're split, not clumped. And finally, the wording is as specific as possible. Now, there are um, there's a video on the Lives in the Balance website in the guided tour. That's what you're going to be looking for. There's a 35-minute video teaching you how to use the ASUP that um, goes through these guidelines more slowly than I just did. Mostly, we want you to know, um, uh, Khadija, we're not quite there yet, but I promise we'll answer your question. Um, right now, we're busy wording unsolved problems well, so as to increase the likelihood that the kid will talk to us. We will get to what happens once you get the ball rolling momentarily. All right, gonna switch past this. There's one more thing to do. Once we've identified all these unsolved problems, we've got to prioritize because caregivers are going to be tempted to try to solve everything at once. Now that they know they're in the problem solving business, rather than the behavior modification business, they're going to want to solve everything at once, right? Years and years of accumulated unsolved problems are going to get done in a week. No way. Um, we're going to help them pick three. We are, this is huge. We are organizing the effort. Remember, generally speaking, caregivers have been responding to behavior, frustration responses in the heat of the moment in a way that is completely disorganized. No offense to caregivers, it's just that's what happens when you're responding in the heat of the moment. You either put out the fire or you make it bigger based on your actions. And then the next day comes, or the next concerning behavior comes. We deal with it in the heat of the moment, we move on. No problems ever get solved. We just go through life that way. We are organizing the effort for people around unsolved problems. We're going to have to pick three that we're going to start with. We're not starting with a bunch. We're going to start with three. And the algorithm for deciding which unsolved problems we start with is right before you now. Safety is big. That's number one. Any unsolved problem contributing to unsafe behaviors is a high priority. Frequency is in the mix. If you don't have safety issues, you could either go with frequency, the unsolved problems that are occurring the most, or gravity, the unsolved problems having the greatest negative impact on this kid's life or the lives of others. If parents want to keep track, although I see this instrument being used much more commonly in schools, this is your tracking instrument. It's called the problem-solving plan. Problem-solving plan has three columns on it, each representing a distinct unsolved problem. We're writing those three unsolved problems we're working on right now with this kid in the top box. We are documenting who's going to be solving those unsolved problems with that kid in the second box. And in the remaining boxes, we are walking through the three steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively that we are about to cover. That's available on the Lives in a Balance website as well. Also in an editable, fillable format like the ASUP, so you can type instead of write and save and share electronically. All right. Our review is almost done. We have three options for handling unsolved problems. Our focal point in this model is Plan B, with a big shout out as well to Plan C. And you are almost never using Plan A when you are implementing this model, even though, at least at this point in human evolution, it is still very popular. The popularity of Plan A, where you're solving a problem unilaterally, is why so many people are walking into your office. Plan A. The adult is deciding what's getting in the kid's way. The adult is deciding what the solution is. The adult is imposing the solution on the kid, often with a sprinkling of adult imposed consequences to incentivize the kid to do the solution and be compliant. That's not this model. Plan B is where you're solving the problem collaboratively. Plan C is where you're putting an expectation on hold for now. Now, Plan C is a big deal. This is huge. This slide is huge. Plan C helps us prioritize. We're organizing the effort for folks. We don't want them working on too many things. They're going to be tempted to work on too many things, right? Because that's been the pattern. That's their life, working on too many things, all in the heat of the moment, all unilaterally. Got to get them away from that life. So we have to prioritize. They're never working on more than three unsolved problems at once. You've heard that term already, expectation management. There's a good chance you're going to have some very interesting discussions with caregivers about whether a kid can actually meet a particular expectation. Now, caregivers put expectations on kids for any variety of reasons. Um, Many of them having absolutely nothing to do with their own kid. Hold on, a sneeze is coming. I'll be right back. Um, how do you know whether a kid can meet an expectation? This is a very important role for a clinician. Coming to some conclusions in concert with caregivers, but coming to your own conclusions too about whether the expectations that are being placed on a kid are expectations this kid can actually meet. I have a simple but imperfect algorithm for you. If a kid can sometimes meet an expectation, it's in range. If a kid is never meeting a particular expectation, I'm going to think it's out of range. And since we're only working at three at a time, I'm not going to worry about the out of range ones right now, even if I'm wrong. I'm going to worry about the ones that are in range for now. Three of them are the ones we're going to start working on first. Because if we put expectations on kids that we already know they can't meet, we will cause concerning behavior and all that goes along with it. In Plan C, you are removing those expectations, at least for now. Now, many caregivers are going to come to the instantaneous belief that if you're removing expectations, you're giving in, you're giving up. Neither is true. You are practicing expectation management, and you might also be stabilizing. There are some kids who are so unstable, so reactive, so volatile that there are very few expectations they're going to be able to meet at this point in their development. That's just where they're at. Now we have two choices. Continue putting expectations on that kid cause concerning behavior and destabilize them further, or remove the expectations that are contributing to the destabilization, get that kid back up on their feet, and slowly but surely start adding expectations as the kid starts to stabilize. Those are the three reasons we'd use Plan C. Now, you'll get pushback on Plan C. Caregivers, and I find this is true both of parents and educators, caregivers are almost allergic to removing expectations. They feel like they're doing the kid a disservice. They feel like, oh, I run into all kinds of things with this. Um, they feel like they're selling the kid short. Um, what else do I hear? I hear everything as it relates to why we don't want to remove an expectation we already know the kid can't meet. None of them make sense. Often it's because the kid is being compared to somebody else's kid, or because we're worried that the kid won't pass the test at school at the end of the school year. Once again, this is worth repeating. High stakes testing is high on my list of events that have occurred over the last 2 or 3 decades that have been bad for kids. The definition of good teaching, the definition of good parenting is meeting every kid where they're at. This is a meeting every kid where they're at model. Prioritizing helps you meet kids where they're at. Can't load this kid up with so many unsolved problems that you're busy solving all at once. Expectation management, giving conscious, deliberate thought to whether a kid can actually meet an expectation. That's meeting every kid where they're at. Stabilizing, if I was unstable and people were still putting expectations on me that they already knew I couldn't meet, um, I would have second thoughts about whether these adults actually knew what they were doing. Karen is asking, is there a lower age limit for this model? No. In generally speaking, I would be doing this model in its basic form with infants, and I would never look back. The big question is whether a individual is going to be able to participate in the process through the spoken word. Infants are obviously out. Non-speaking kids may be out when it comes to the spoken word, but that doesn't mean you can't collaborate with infants. We do all the time. It doesn't mean we can't engage non-speaking kids in the process of solving the problems that are affecting their lives. This slide is critical because among the biggest reasons kids who we call out of control are out of control is because we're putting expectations on them that they're currently unable to meet. We are not going to perpetuate that in this model. Often, and this is more school related, we are plugging them into services before we have the slightest idea what's getting in the way of them meeting certain expectations. None of this thinking starts to make sense until we're focused on problems instead of the behaviors that are being caused by those problems. None of this happens unless we know that we should be collaborating with kids rather than being unilateral. None of this happens unless we are consumed with being proactive early instead of reactive late. Most of this doesn't occur unless we have the mentality that kids do all if they can. Most of this doesn't occur unless we have the mentality that this kid would very much prefer to be doing well, and that we've been doing this kid an enormous disfavor for having not identified the things that are getting in their way yet. Huge. I'm going to do a quick question check here. I've been watching them come into the chat, but I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So, Karen, did I answer Karen's question? I answered Karen's question. Okay. Don't hesitate to put questions in there. I like to answer them as we go along. I'm going to skip this one. Lilith, I don't know if I'm going to get to your specific question, but I will try. But I will answer Abigail's now. Lilith, yours is a great question, just might be more specific than we're able to do today. Um, Khadijah, your question is coming soon. Abigail is asking, how can this model apply to developmentally delayed parents who may only view problems as black and white? Well, they may only view problems as black and white when they enter treatment, but they're not coming into treatment because things don't need to change. They're coming into treatment because things do need to change. And I think that not sure what you're saying by they're only viewing problems as black and white. Excellent chance parents are still viewing behaviors as black and white. When we help them understand what's causing those behaviors, unsolved problems, often we can see a shift in their mentality. You know your parents, you know the parents you're referring to better than me. Um, we've got to get them into this way of thinking. I haven't come across any parents, developmentally delayed or otherwise, who are so black and white that they can't move from behavior to the problems that are causing those behaviors. That's the biggest shift. Might this go more slowly? Maybe, maybe not. But developmentally delayed parents are not a monolith. I'm not selling anybody short just because of something, one thing that I know about them. Um, so I can't answer that very specifically because I don't know the specific parents you're referring to. The biggest shift, whether they're black and white or developmentally delayed or otherwise, is moving from focusing on a kid's concerning behaviors to focusing instead on the problems that are causing them. Might that take more than one session? It might. As you all probably know, there are three steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively. Now life is becoming interesting. Life is already interesting. Everything we're covering is interesting. There are so many shifts that occur for people in this model, and you are right there alongside of them, helping them make those shifts. Not because you're commanding them, but because you're helping them. You have ideas that are different. You have a different way of viewing things. You're not imposing those ideas, but you are helping people come to them. The three steps are called the empathy step, the define adult concern step, and the invitation step. The empathy step is where you're gathering information from the kid about what's making it hard for them to meet an expectation. And the reason I'm putting off questions about non-speaking kids is because sometimes it takes me 20 minutes to cover what this looks like with non-speaking kids and adults, by the way. In Ireland, this model is exploding in their adult disability services. We have amazing videos coming of caregivers doing this very process with non-speaking and minimally speaking adults and kids. But the empathy step is where you're gathering information. As you heard me say earlier, the kid is your number one source of information on what's making it hard for the kid to meet an expectation. They have information we very badly need, information we won't get in this lifetime if we're asking them why they just hit Billy. You're not going to get the information you're looking for by asking kids about their concerning behavior. No way, no how. Start with an unsolved problem. You're not talking with kids about their concerning behavior in this model. You will reduce concerning behavior by implementing this model. It's just that the concerning behavior is not the primary focal point of intervention. I'll get into some of the nuances about each of these three steps. The define it all concern step is where the adult is entering their concern into consideration. Basically, that's the answer to the question, why is it important that this expectation be met? Many parents don't know why it would be important that that expectation be met. We'll have to help them figure it out. Sometimes, you don't want to bank on this, but sometimes when you're helping parents figure out why they think it's important that the expectation be met, they come to the conclusion that they don't feel that it's important that the expectation be met. All right, that unsolved problem is gone because we've had a discussion. Good example here. Now, I want to make sure that we do as many cases as I can talk about in this next hour now that we are largely through the review. A mother who was participating in a group that I was doing, 5-year-old daughter, she wanted her daughter to go to the bathroom by herself. The daughter always needed the mother to go with her to the bathroom. She didn't need help from the mother doing anything in the bathroom. She just wanted the mother's company in the bathroom. And mom tried to do these 3 steps with the daughter, but um, as a mix of expectation management and the define it all concern step, the main reason the mother thought it was important that her daughter go to the bathroom by herself, unescorted, was that she was 5 years old. Um, don't most 5-year-olds go to the bathroom on their own? Yeah, most 5-year-olds go to the bathroom on their own. Do you think your daughter is capable of going to the bathroom on her own? I don't really care about other 5-year-olds. I care about your 5-year-old and what you think she can do. And then the mother started thinking about it. What she was thinking about was her daughter's history of abuse and trauma. And she began thinking about some of the things her daughter was saying to her as why it was hard for her to go to the bathroom on her own. And then the mother decided, I don't think I want to have that expectation for my daughter. Now that I've thought about it, now that I've thought about my rationale for it, I'm dropping that one. Um, that's the way this goes sometimes. That's not what you're banking on. It's not like you're banking on everything getting dropped so the kid stops exhibiting frustration responses, but you are really helping adults engage in a very conscious process about their kid, what their kid can do, and the expectations they are placing on their kid. Huge part of the process. Um, Things are starting to shift just by helping parents and other caregivers focus on unsolved problems rather than the behaviors that are being caused by them. If we're focused on behaviors, we almost never get around to thinking about the developmental appropriateness of a given expectation for this kid, not 5-year-olds, this 5-year-old. Huge. And the invitation step. This is where kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution. But, and some of you know this already, the solution has to meet 2 criteria. It's got to be realistic. Both parties got to be able to do what they're agreeing to do. This is not pie in the sky. Try harder is a lousy solution. Try harder addresses nobody's concerns. And it's got to be mutually satisfactory, meaning the solution truly has to address the concerns of both parties. As interesting as everything we've covered so far is, life is about to get even more interesting. As we take caregivers who are accustomed to focusing on behavior and instead help them start solving problems, when we take caregivers who've been accustomed to imposing solutions and have them start to collaborate on solutions, when we take caregivers who, if they've been asking the kid anything, they've been asking the kid about their concerning behavior, now getting really curious about what's making it hard for a kid to meet a particular expectation, everything is changing. And we've organized the effort so that they know what unsolved problems they are not working on right now. That's plan C. And they know what unsolved problems they are working on right now. That's plan B. Um, we got to get them good at all 3 steps. What's the hard part of the empathy step? Well, after you've identified your unsolved problems, remember, we're trying to get people out of the heat of the moment. Um, Once we've identified our unsolved problems and we've picked our 3, here's what the empathy step begins with. It starts with an introduction. The introduction begins with the words, I've noticed that, and ends with the words, what's up? In between, You are sandwiching that high priority, one of your top three unsolved problems. Um, Life is about to get interesting because, and I'm going to go through how you do this in a clinical setting. I'm just getting through the basics of problem solving at the moment. Then we're going to go clinical. Five things could happen after you say, "What's up?" The kid could say something. The kid could say nothing, or I don't know. The kid could say, "I don't have a problem with that," or "I don't care." The kid could say, "I don't want to talk about it right now." Or the kid could get defensive and say something like, "I don't have to talk to you," or worse. We're going to spend most of our time here on number one, but I want to cover number five too, because I've got a good story for you. We implemented this model in the juvenile detention system in the state of Maine, where I'm sitting right now. Um, Here's some impressive data. In the state of Maine, there were 250 kids in lockup when we started implementing this model. When we were done, there were 40. The recidivism rate went from 85% to 15%. Staff and kid injuries plummeted. When do staff and kid injuries occur? When we're late, when we're being reactive. Um, the goal is to get so, and by the way, if there's any population that would be defined by the size of the unsolved problems they're walking in the door with, the size of the pile of unsolved problems, it's kids in juvenile detention. Beyond that, I didn't find them to be any different than kids I work with in any other setting. Kids I work with all have big piles of unsolved problems. Why did the pile get so big? Because people weren't focused on the unsolved problems. They were focused on the behaviors. So the unsolved problems never got identified and solved. That's what when you're seeing the world through these lenses, that's what you start to see. Kids with big piles of still unidentified, still unsolved problems. Um, in juvie, there was this kid, 17 years old. He had been living by his wits for a very long time. Lost faith in the adult species a long time ago, and they couldn't get him to talk to anybody. So they asked me to meet with him by Zoom with a staff member sitting in. This kid was incarcerated because he had beaten somebody to within a centimeter of their lives. So I'm meeting with him by Zoom, not my preference. And when he sits down in the room that the Zoom was in, he said, "There's no point in doing this. There's no point in doing this." I said, "That's right. I'm speeding this up. I've worked with 16 or 17 of y'all in my life, and none of y'all has ever done me any good." Oh, good. The kid is talking. That's what I care about, right? Um, you, I'm just going to repeat back to the kid whatever the kid just said to me. That's one of our top drilling strategies, which will be on the next slide. Uh, you've worked with 16 or 17 of me's, and none of us has ever done you any good. That's right. And you're not going to either. So I'm not going to do you any good either. Right. So there's no point in doing this. I get it. And we can stop. Before we stop, let me ask you one question. Then we could be done. If there was somebody in the facility who could help you, and I get it, there's nobody in the facility who can help you. That's what you said. Is there anything you would want to talk to somebody about? He bit. He said, "I would like when I get mad at somebody to not feel like I want to kill them." Is he talking? He's talking. Did he keep talking? He did. Um, this kids in juvie are no different than any other kid. We all want to feel heard. Recidivism reduced from 85% to 15%, Kathy. And we're ready to do that in New York too. Um, let's talk about the kids saying something, because this is really where most of the action's at. There are 8 drilling strategies. This is what you are helping caregivers get look good at, and I'll describe how momentarily. There are 8 drilling strategies. 3 are on this slide. Your number one drilling strategy, the default drilling strategy, the one parents or caregivers are going to be using the most is reflective listening, what I was just doing with that kid. Saying back to the kid whatever the kid just said to you. Some people call it mirroring. It's the number one drilling strategy in this model. It's the one parents are going to be using the most. It makes it easy, especially when you think of things they have been saying. As I always say about reflective listening, very good way to help the kid feel heard, very good way to help the kid clarify their concerns, very good way to help the kid feel understood, very good way to help the kid feel like their concerns are legit, and a very good way to keep the kid talking. In this model, you want the kid to talk. Otherwise, you miss out on all the information that's been missing all this time. Another great strategy, another one of the top 3, is asking W questions: who, what, where, when. And the third of the 3 most popular drilling strategies, summarizing and asking for more. This is where the caregiver is recapping or restating what they've heard from the kids so far, and they're asking for more. And here's the deal. There's going to be more, which means you're going to be summarizing and asking for more multiple times in every empathy step before there's no more. And when there's no more, the empathy step is done. Now I'm going to go back to that example from earlier in the chat. The kid who was having difficulty, if I'm remembering correctly, getting dressed in the morning. Don't remember the other one. And I think it was mom telling us, here's the first thing I heard. That's just the beginning of the beginning. Start drilling. First thing you heard is the beginning of the beginning. And it's fine to repeat back to the kid. Ah, so you like, I'm just going to go back into the chat so I can be really specific. Hold on. So you like getting a snack or reading more than putting your clothes on. That's reflective listening. Um, by the way, that's not your excuse to start a sermon. But as you know, no, just reflective listening, right? Um, is there anything else making it hard for you to put your clothes on in the morning? I get it. Um, you want to get a snack and you prefer to read. Um, Anything else making it hard for you to get dressed, to put your clothes on in the morning? So the first thing the kid says is the beginning of the beginning. Here's what's interesting. A lot of unsolved problems the kid's never been asked before. So it wouldn't be surprising. You ask me something I've never thought about before. Um, Good question from Julie. Um, a lot of, oh, what was I going to say? It's gone. This question, how do you do the empathy step without asking questions? My client stated providers asking so many questions is a trigger. Number one, we could ask the kid, see, this is the default, right? Um, we could revise the unsolved problem to um, difficulty answering questions about what's making it hard for you to meet expectations. Now you're going at what the kid is telling you is hard, right? Why would you not ask the kid? They know. We don't know. Um, Here's what I'm often hearing when I ask that question. Well, when you ask me questions like that, I think I'm in trouble. Um, when you ask me questions like that, I think you're about to lower the boom. That's history coming back to haunt us. That's not this model, but kids don't know that yet, right? Oh, no, I'm just trying to understand. I'm not, no booms, right? No trouble. I'm not mad at you. You're not in trouble. I'm just trying to understand. Promise. The boom is not about to be lowered. I think the reason that this is still hard is because we've never understood what's been getting in your way on this. So let's figure it out. Um, there's other ways to gather information from kids that we may get to today that don't involve the verbal asking of questions. But notice what I don't do. I don't assume that I know what's making it hard for the kid to answer questions. No, I've got the kid's the one who's got to tell me that. And therefore, I don't assume that I know what the solution is. I mean, I've got some depending on what the kid tells me, but I don't make assumptions here. Um, what the kid tells us is what guides the process. Huge. It's very interesting. Takes a lot of pressure off because I've never been a very good mind reader. And I've never been very good at coming up with solutions to things I don't yet understand. A lot of us mental health professionals, we think the pressure's on. Well, aren't I supposed to know? No, you're supposed to know how to gather information from kids so that you and the kid together can come up with a solution that works for both of you. I wish more of us had been trained that way. I wasn't. Let me just look more in the chat here. All right. Those are your three top drilling strategies. As you're about to hear, those are what you're modeling for caregivers when you get to this phase of working with them. Let me just look in the Q&A first because some people are. Julie, you're welcome. Lilith, I'm holding on to your question just in case, though I have my doubts. There's 5 other drilling strategies because I said there were 8. You'll find a drilling cheat sheet on the Lives in the Balance website that has all 8 on them with descriptions of what each of them involves. But when I'm working with caregivers who are new at this, I don't teach them all 8. I teach them the first 3. The other 5 are gravy. They can do a beautiful empathy step with just these 3. Let's get them rolling with 3. Let's get them some muscle memory for this. Let's have them experience this. Um, I'm just going to cover part of this. What if the kid says nothing or I don't know? There's a whole bunch of reasons kids might say nothing or I don't know. I'm going to say, tell me the story. And if, as I'm listening to the story, here's what I'm likely to hear. First of all, the adult didn't do plan B, they did plan A. Um, I'm going to have to give them feedback on that. Secondly, this is big. They might not have done plan B proactively, they might have done it emergently. They've added heat and rush to the mix. Good luck with that. Third, they didn't word their unsolved problems according to the guidelines. You'll want to watch that video before you start helping people. Um, complete the ASUP as a discussion guide. And fourth, their demeanor is still very plan A, even though they're trying to do plan B. That's feedback us clinicians can give them. We're getting there. Life is about to get very interesting. I'm going to skip past, I don't want to skip past this. There's some things about the kid that might be making it hard for the kid to talk. I've got a story I want to tell you on this one. The second bullet here. I was working with a kid in a residential facility in upstate New York that I was consulting to, 10th grader, who was having difficulty reading out loud in social studies. His frustration response, well, whenever he was asked to read out loud in social studies, he would get up and leave the room, something he was being punished for relentlessly. And yet, he's still having difficulty reading out loud in social studies. So they asked me to demonstrate what Plan B would look like for that kid on that unsolved problem. And when I started the empathy step with him, I started getting a lot of I've lost faith statements. I've lost faith statements. How do you know a kid has lost faith? They tell you with statements like, this will never get better. There's no point in talking about this. You can't help me. Those are I've lost faith statements. Now I have a strategy for you. Whenever I get I've lost faith statements, I'm always asking, was it always so? See, I know it wasn't always so because the kid wasn't born having lost faith. Something must have happened along the way. Maybe the kid will talk about that because those I've lost faith statements feel like conversation stoppers, but they're not. Um, was it always so? The kid said, no, it's not always so. I said, tell me a time. He said, first grade, Mrs. Edwards. I said, tell me about first grade, Mrs. Edwards. He said, she was really nice. She gave me the help I needed. When did, he's talking, right? That was the goal. Although I'm learning some things too. When did things start going badly for you? Second grade, Mrs. Johnson. Tell me about second grade, Mrs. Johnson. Not nice, not helpful. All right, now that I got the kid talking, let me see if I can go back to the original topic. Tell me, how are things going for you in social studies these days? He leaned forward in his chair and whispered, I don't know how to read. Reflective listening. You don't know how to read. And you've been struggling with that for 9 or 10 years. Now, at some point, maybe not that day, because I don't want the kid to say no reflexively, but at some point, I got to ask the kid the following question. Tell me, if we could do something about the reading now, would you be interested? My attitude, if the kid's not interested today, hopefully the kid's interested tomorrow, because it is tragic, and I see this all the time. It is tragic that that kid's been lugging that unsolved problem around like a bowling ball for 9 or 10 years and paying a very high price for it, and it's still unsolved. Um, we pay and they pay a very high price for focusing on behavior instead of the problems that are causing it. This is huge. If you don't get anything from the kid, it is okay to do some educated guessing or some hypothesis testing. We've just skipped a bunch of things you can do to try to help kids talk if they're not. But if they're still not, you can do some educated get. Oh, I got some heartbreakers, Kathy. Um, as you all probably know, when you are in this business, your heart gets broken a lot. It is a jungle out there. Um, Especially if we keep characterizing kids and their caregivers incorrectly. Um, hmm. Occasionally, I read the New York Post for entertainment, mostly the comments section. The comments section of the New York Post sometimes tells me how far we as a society need to go. And obviously, I'm intrigued by stories about kids behaving badly because then we get thousands of comments about how the parents screwed it up. This is still a very popular belief system. Um, we got a long way to go. I'm glad there's so many of you in here today. You're critical. I can't do this by myself. Just check the chat here. Oh. If a kid won't respond to your guesses, use 5 fingers. I do this all the time. This is a great strategy. And there's others. We don't have time to cover them all. Maybe the next one. 5 means very true. 4 means pretty true. 3 means sort of true. 2 means not very true. 1 means not true at all. Um, then I make my statements to the kid, my theories, my guesses, and all the kid's got to do is hold up fingers to let me know how true my guess is. I do that with kids who can talk but aren't. I do that plus a bunch of other things on here with kids who aren't talking because they can't. We are barely scratching the surface on that population. But if a kid is using assistive technology, I think we're good. because we're using the assistive technology for the kid to tell us what's making it hard for them. Julie is saying I use a whiteboard in my office. I'm not picky about how we help kids communicate. I've got this incredible video that I filmed when I was in Ireland of an 18-year-old kid, 17 maybe, using a letterboard to communicate. And boy, was he saying some touching things related to not being sold short. Um, Talk about touching. And immediately that drew a response saying that the American Speech and Hearing Association doesn't endorse the use of letterboards anymore. And I thought, I'm not in that space, but my attitude is I get how letterboards and typing can be abused, but I didn't see the letterboard being abused. And if that's how the kid is able to communicate, by golly, that's how we're going to do it. That video may at some point be on the Lives in the Balance website when we finally get our page up for how to do this process with non-speaking kids, which has been taking forever. But there are lots of options for kids who aren't talking because they can't, um, and can talk but aren't. But I want to get to as you can see, I over-prepared because I never know how long this is going to take. Here's the sequence of events in a clinical setting. Then we might go back. We'll see. Here's the sequence of events in a clinical setting. We don't call them session numbers. We call them session types. Type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type X. What's going on in a type 1 session? The ASUP. Um, I'm first meeting with caregivers. Hold on, there's a sneeze coming. See if I can get rid of it. Is it a stubborn sneeze or a sneeze that goes away easily? Might be gone. I might listen to caregivers telling me about a kid's concerning behavior for the first, I don't know, 2 to 5 minutes, because I want them to know that I feel their pain. And that's what they want to start talking about first. But as quickly as I can, we are moving over to unsolved problems. And what I'm saying to them is, um, from what I can gather, you have been trying to incentivize your kid to behave properly for a long time. What you're telling me is that that hasn't been working very well for you. Back in the day, early in my training, I would have assumed that that's because you weren't doing those sticker charts to perfection. And I thought that it was my job to help you do sticker charts to perfection, but that's not my job. Sticker charts, even those done to imperfection, if they're not working, it's time to move on. You are now seeing the limits of incentivizing adaptive behavior while the unsolved problems that are causing that behavior remain unidentified and unsolved. Sticker charts don't work not because they aren't done to perfection, but because they're focused on the wrong thing. Let's start talking about the right thing. What I'd like to do here is understand better why your kid has big frustration responses and what they are responding in a frustrated way to. And now the ASIP begins. And as you now know, over that next 30 minutes, massive changes occur. If a family is coming in hot in session number 1, and it appears to me, I don't think we're getting to the ASIP today. I got to chill these folks out before we get anything. This fire is too hot. The flames are too high. We may not get to the ASIP in session number 1. What am I going to do in session number 1? I'm going to try to help people chill out. And the message in a let's chill this out session is conflict is the absolute worst thing going on in your family. I get it. You have goals for your kid, you have expectations for your kid, but the conflict being caused by those expectations is not only ruining your relationship with your kid, it is ruining your family. Um, I'm going to be able to help you get those expectations met, but not the way you're doing it now. But for me to be able to help you, I need to chill things out. So, um, there actually may not be any expectations that I think your kid should meet for the next week. What about curfew? Is your kid coming in on time for curfew now? No. Is that causing a lot of conflict? Yes. And your kid still isn't meeting the expectation? Right. No harm. What about homework? Your kid doing their homework now? No. Causing a lot of conflict? Yeah. All that conflict helping you get the homework done? No. I can help you with the homework, but not if the way I'm helping you causes conflict. There's ways that we can get these expectations met that does not involve conflict. But we got to chill it out first, because if you're coming in hot every week, I won't be able to do what I know I can do to help you. That could be session number one. Eventually, I want to get to the ASUP, but I've just made a very important point for them. Conflict is the worst thing going on in your family. Many people didn't know that. And things are no better. Even with all that conflict, your expectations still aren't getting met. What's the harm? Your expectations aren't getting met anyways. So you can have a lot of conflict and not get your expectations met, or we can chill out on the conflict and not get your expectations met. I'd rather go with door number two. They would too. But you're going to help us, right? Of course, I'm going to help you. But we got to get rid of the conflict first. We got to put out this fire. Type 2 session. This is where the kid is not there. This is just the caregivers. I'm teaching them about the three plans, A, B, C, and I'm teaching them about the three steps of Plan B. And yes, we have given short shrift to the define adult concern step and the invitation step, but I'm leaving out some details just to make sure you have the general picture. You can always get some more training if you want more details. Um, and it takes me, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes to tell them about the three plans. They're probably doing Plan A. I'm pointing that out to them. They're probably putting expectations on their kid that their kid can't meet. That's going to be Plan C. Um, and the thing we got to get them really good at is Plan B. And there are three steps for doing that. After 20 or 30 minutes, if this is a 50 or 60-minute session, um, it's question time. And here are the questions I'm likely to get. Isn't this like kind of wimpy? Actually, this is really hard. Isn't this kind of passive? No, this is actually very active. Um, isn't this, does this involve giving in? No, nothing in this model about giving in. Giving up? Nothing in this model about giving up. Is my kid going to respect me when I'm done with all this? I don't know if your kid is respecting you with all this conflict occurring. I think we got much better shot at your kid respecting you if you're solving problems together. Am I still an authority figure? Way more of an authority figure than you're being when you're causing conflict with your kid and potentially putting expectations on your kid that you already know they can't meet. So no consequences. Um, how's that been working out for you? All those consequences. See, here's why those consequences haven't been working for you. Consequences are not problem-solving strategies. Consequences are behavior modification strategies. You are in the problem-solving business now. Type 3, the kid is now back. The caregivers are back. And I'm going to demonstrate Plan B for them on one of our three high priority unsolved problems. And I'm going to tell them what I'm doing at every step along the way so that the caregivers in particular are connecting what I'm doing with what they heard the previous week. Many mental health professionals find a type 3 session to be very difficult because they aren't accustomed to saying what they're doing. But the reason you're saying what you're doing is because you don't want to be doing this for this family forever. You are trying to promote independence at every step along the way. Um, you want them to know what you're doing. And by the way, it's perfectly okay for the kid to know what you're doing. There's no hidden agenda here. Um, this is completely transparent. Conflict is being caused by these problems that are still unsolved. Let's solve them. We might do 2 or 3 type 3 sessions. You see how much demonstrating they need, how much they're picking it up. Could be more. I'm good with that. Type 4. This is where the caregivers start to try to do Plan B with me in the office coaching them along, or in the household coaching them along. Um, and what I'm going to be focused on mostly in a type 4 session is what we would call technical factors. Did they leave the empathy step prematurely? Did they fail to summarize and ask for more, so they missed out on what could be more? Do they have a plan A demeanor while they're trying to do plan B? All these things are coachable. Um, are they beginning to develop fluency with the drilling strategies? And can I help them along? We might do 2 or 3 type 4 sessions over time. I'm pulling back more and more as indicated because I want to promote independence. My definition of treatment working is treatment ending. The definition of treatment ending is they don't need you anymore. Then I send them home to do Plan B. After a few type 4 sessions, I do not send people home to do Plan B before I think they're ready. They don't know what they're doing yet. That's not an insult to them. This is new for them. I don't send them home until they're ready. Then they come back and they tell me what they did. And we do some troubleshooting if it went well or didn't go well. That's still all within the type 4 context. And then finally, how many sessions on type 4? Variable, but generally speaking, 2 or 3. Um, type X. It used to be called type 5. Um, but type 5 made it sound like it comes at the end. And a type X session can come at any point along the way. Um, that's where we are addressing interfering factors. Technical factors are things that they are doing incorrectly about Plan B. Interfering factors are factors that are keeping them from doing Plan B in the first place. And in a lot of families, there are a lot of potential type X factors. Type X factors are going to interfere with any form of therapy, this one included. What might Digna asked a question? Do I see a question from Digna? Ah, yes, I did. Um, Time can be a factor for some families. That's a problem that needs to be solved. Some families need help creating time to do Plan B with a kid. I recommend that it be an appointed time between the kid and the adult. I recommend that we let the kid know what we're talking about, what you'd like to understand better beforehand. Otherwise, you're surprising the kid with the topic, even though you might be doing Plan B proactively. Tell the kid ahead of time what it is that you would like to understand better. Time. Many families, things are not going too well between mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad. If that's interfering with them doing Plan B, we might have to pull back a little bit to address that. 2 parents come to mind there who I was working with quite some time ago. It was crystal clear these 2 people hated each other. This was a mom and dad, detested each other. You could feel it the minute they walked in the room, and they acknowledged that they really hated each other, but they also acknowledged that they weren't getting divorced anytime soon. So we're sticking together. My question to them is, can you put your differences aside so that you can collaborate on solving problems with your kid? Can we get enough of being on the same page as it relates to how we want to do things with your kid so that all of this marital stuff does not interfere with that. They thought they could, and they did. I mean, eventually they did get divorced because while Plan B could have helped them maritally, that was not the focal point of the work that I was doing with them. Here's what's interesting. A lot of parents come in hot, mostly because they disagree on how to parent this kid. There's the parent who is saying, if my partner would just do more plan A, everything would go fine. And there's the parent who is saying, I'm not doing plan A, it's ruining my family. Where do they come together? On agreeing on the expectations that a kid is having difficulty meeting. They're coming together on that and agreeing on a different approach to solving those problems that is not plan A. Just those ingredients are incredibly helpful to help bring parents together. Yes, there are lots of families where somebody is drunk every night. There are families where caregivers, some of them at least, are doing drugs in front of the kid. I'm mentioning specific examples here from the past, and taunting their 8-year-old kid if the kid won't do drugs with them. I know that we're about to have a type X session when I'm expecting the entire family to show up, and only one caregiver shows up and says, um, there's some things about my family you don't know yet. I'm about to hear some type X stuff. And the big clinical decision at that moment is, are we going to be able to continue plunging forward with plan B? Or is plunging forward with plan B not going to be powerful enough to help overcome these type X factors? Do we have to do some problem solving on these type X factors? That's what this looks like in a clinical setting. Once caregivers are able to do this on their own, you're done. Did you solve all the problems that you identified? No. First of all, you're not going to have to solve all of them because some are going to solve by solving others. If this kid has 30 or 40 different unsolved problems, I'm betting you're going to end up solving 8, 10, because some are going to solve by solving others. So caregivers can go get overwhelmed if there are a lot of unsolved problems. You'll want to reassure them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot. We're not going to have to solve all of them. We're only going to do 3 at a time. Some are going to solve by solving others. So let's just get our 3 nailed down, and we're not going to worry about the rest right now. Those are plan C. We organized the effort. That is so huge. Now, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought here at the end. I'm actually feeling much better. And one sneeze in 2 hours. Should have seen me this morning. Um, oh well, that's what it looks like in a clinical setting. Um, Once they're able to do it on their own, treatment is done. And that was the goal. So you are not, that's what I'm going to say, you are not on the hook. They're not in treatment with you until every problem gets solved. They're in treatment with you for enough unsolved problems, 2, 3, 4, so that they now are good at this and can do it on their own. That's the design. That's the goal. Now, I'm going to stop and just answer some questions here because this is a good place to stop. Digna is asking, would it be possible to focus on working with helping parents, working on Plan B to help their children? Digna, I do not understand your question. So if you can reword it so I can give you the answer you're looking for, I would be delighted. Let me also let you know while we're here with only a few minutes left. So Digna, if you want to put that question back in, I'm happy to give it a whirl. There's Jackie. Jackie may be cutting me off here. That's sometimes when she shows up. No. Um, Lives in the Balance, my nonprofit, does something called a certification training. It's intense. It's 24 weeks, virtual, where you're submitting work samples every week and getting feedback. If you want to get, if you want to hit the holy grail of this model, um, that's there. But I have this funny feeling Jackie and I will be talking about the next one of these so we can take you further. So if you want to let Jackie know what questions you wish had been answered um, during this that didn't get answered, and we'll do our best. Um, Karen is saying, is she asking about how to start the conversation with parents? If that's the case, I can answer the question. Remember, parents are coming in, talking about certain things, having certain questions. We're going to meet them where they're at. They're talking about their kids' concerning behavior most of the time, and they want to know why their kid has concerning behavior. Doesn't make any sense to them. They've done everything, generally speaking, right? They're desperate. They've often seen many other mental health professionals who also talk to them only about the kids' concerning behavior and also only taught them how to do consequences with their kid, right? Um, Elaine is saying that the survey is not opening. I'm sure that Jackie will help you out there. Let's take them where they're at. They want to talk about their behavior and why it's occurring. Skills. It's not poor parenting. It's not your kid yanking your chain. Skills. Let me talk about them. Let's actually go through the skills and tell me if your kid comes alive as we're talking about the skills. The kid always comes alive as we're talking about skills. Now let's talk about what your kid is exhibiting frustration responses about. That's unsolved problems. In 45 minutes, we've changed their lenses. The conversation has begun. We have the raw material we need to completely reorganize the effort and reorganize how they go about interacting with their kid. And Digna is asking, now I get it. Um, do I do plan B on type X issues? You know me. Um, what good would it do for me to tell these people what to do? There's only one time I'm doing plan A with anybody, and that's if I'm a mandated reporter. Mandated reporters plan A. Here's what's interesting about being a mandated reporter. I know that when they get reported, Department of Social Services is going to want to know if they're in treatment, and I'm going to say that they are in treatment. And so plan A really didn't do anything, often, not always. Sometimes that plan A is critical to a kid's well-being. But generally speaking, social services wants to know if these folks are being cared for. Yes, they're being cared for. And I'm teaching them how to do plan B because plan A is what is causing all that conflict that is causing them to behave in ways that cause me to have to report them to social services. I think we're done. Jackie, a big thank you for hosting this again. Much
Thank
of
you. This was incredible, as always. So much thanks to you, Dr. Greene. Thanks to everybody so much for all of your incredible questions. As Dr. Greene mentioned, I doubt that this is the last time that we will have him.
too
We
much
love
fun.
working with him, and it feels like it's always so useful to everyone. Thank you all so much for attending. Please go to our website, mcsilverta.org, for our future events. We have some really great webinars coming up in the next couple weeks. And we will, again, please do the post survey, which is in the chat. And yeah, we will see you all at our next event. Thank you all so, so much.
Hold on.